The Harder They Fall is directed by Jim S. Samuel and stars Jonathan Majors, Zazie Beetz, R.J. Seiler, Idris Elba, Damon Wayans Jr., Regina King, and a whole host of others. And it tells the story of an outlaw who discovers his enemy is being released from prison, so he reunites with his gang to seek revenge, Wild West style. So I'm going to start this one out by saying up front, I am not the biggest fan of westerns. I don't. There are a lot of them that I liked. I loved The Quick and the Dead, Tombstone, Posse, a bunch of them. I even enjoyed The Magnificent Seven, both the original and the remake in different ways. But I don't really seek them out. That said, considering the star power in this, I had to sit down and watch it. And I'm glad I did, because this was really, really good. Although it had some missteps, at least in my humble opinion. So let's get into it. This movie looks amazing. Now, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of westerns, but I am familiar with the classics. I do know who Sergio Leone is, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which of course this movie definitely is emulating. And the shots, the cinematography in this is amazing. It's beautiful to look at. This movie would have, to see this on the big screen, it would have been something else, but of course it's a Netflix original. But yeah, those beautiful wide shots, where I felt like I had to pause and just kind of look at everything and everyone that was in that shot. We have the wide open plains, of course, scenes like that train coming in and all of those things. They jump out at you, and it's just the color choices. Everything is just spot on visually. I really enjoyed the cinematography in this film. I felt like it's one of those movies that I could probably watch on mute and still enjoy a lot of what I'm seeing. The score, of course, the director here, who also had a hand in writing the screenplay, also composed and performed the music for this film under his stage name. I think it's The Bullets. The music here, while I like the score, I wasn't so huge on the soundtrack. Now, I understand that it's going for something different, because the cast here, the characters here are all black people. It's really taking a look at these people who actually existed. A lot of these names, for people who are familiar with that historical time, well, these names will jump out at you. Nat Love, Bass Reeves, Stagecoach Mary, Cherokee Bill. These are names we've even seen probably in other films, although for a long time they were portrayed by white actors. So with the cast being an all-black cast, you have the music encompasses that. It's part of that. It's part of the culture. That said, though, while I would listen to this soundtrack, absolutely separate from this film, I love the soundtrack. In the movie itself, it pulled me out a bit, and it was twofold. The first reason for it being, it's not really the kind of songs you would hear in a western. Understand, I get what they're going for, but for me, every time a song came on, you'd have somebody riding into town and this music would come on. I just was like, wait, what? I'm watching a western. It just didn't gel for me in that way. I'm sure for people who have much more experience in this sort of thing, they probably know this worked for them, but for me, it pulled me out every time it happened. And secondly was because there was so much of it. There were even moments where cast members, I think there's a scene with Jonathan Majors' character is whistling one of the tunes. I think the same thing happens with Rufus Buck, who that's Idris Elba's character. They're whistling the songs that we heard playing, and it's kind of surreal. It feels almost like you're breaking the fourth wall. And there's so much music in this that it almost feels like it's a musical and not just a western. I would not have been surprised to see a character break out in song, which I would absolutely not want, because musicals also kind of low down on my genre choices. So yeah, the music for me, it didn't quite work as well as, I'm sure it worked well for others. It just didn't, I couldn't get behind it. That said, though, The acting and the story here, it's just everything you would want in this type of western, because this is definitely going for that classic old school western. You know, we've had some modern day westerns where things are done differently. It does have a modern day feel to it. A good example might be the Magnificent Seven remake. That definitely doesn't feel quite like it should. It doesn't really pull you completely into the fact that it's a western. It has some of the fight choreography. It feels quite modern. Same thing now, it happens here, but it never pulled me out. The For me, the story here, those long conversations that would take place between characters, was very reminiscent of those old school westerns, you know, where two people would have these long sets of dialogue before a shootout and that sort of thing. There's a lot of that here, and it also gave us time to get to know these characters, because in a cast of characters is huge. Sometimes what we would get in a movie such as this is you get broad strokes on who these characters are. You get a little backstory in this one, a little backstory on that one. Here, because we had the time to get to know these characters, it really did you really do it does leave an impact when something happens to one of them. A good example for me of this was the character who he wanted to be the fastest in the West, that sort of thing. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering his name. But you know, he had a lot of he was more the comical character in this. He was played for the laughs, even though there's not a lot of laughs in this, you know. So you have those moments and they work. When something happens to these characters, you do tend to feel it. Granted, the runtime and the long conversations, I also started to feel that a bit while I was watching it. You never want to be aware of that. You never want to be looking at the time when you're watching a movie. It's not that I did that, but I started to feel it a bit, you know. But again, like I said, it's going for that old school vibe, and because we get to know these characters, get to connect with them. One of the things that really jumped out at me with these characters was there was a lot of gray. There was no black and white. There were no white hats. No, these are all the good guys and these are all the bad guys. I never got a sense of that. You know, real people are complicated like that, especially, I guess, in that timeline too, where everything is a fight for survival. I really loved that the director and writer wrote these characters in a way that you found yourself, sometimes I would be rooting for the Rufus Buck gang, and sometimes I would be rooting for the Nat Love gang. And everybody there was just things that, you know, this guy is not all bad, but he's not all good. You know, it made it an interesting watch, because most movies, they draw that line very clearly. This one doesn't do that, because the theme here in this film, in this very violent, bloody film, is that violence begets violence. You know, it's a cycle, and if you don't break that cycle, it's just going to continue and continue and continue. And even from the opening, that is very firmly established, because you don't even need to see the rest of the movie, not that you shouldn't, but that opening scene, we see the setup for that road to vengeance, you know. And it goes along that way, and you see characters making decisions that you just know it's going to end badly. So I did like that theme, and it's very clear, you know. There's nothing overly complicated here. The actors do a wonderful job of bringing their characters to life. I think everybody will have their favorites. I was surprised though to see that Idris Elba honestly felt like he didn't have that much dialogue or that many scenes in this, which surprised me. But at the same time, his acting, his portrayal of this character of Rufus Buck, this is absolutely one of the most terrifying characters I've seen in a long time. There's nothing scarier than a villain who does not see themselves as a villain, you know. And I think, like I said, and then that's the thing, what he's trying to do, it's not a bad thing, it's just the way he's going about it, you know. So I really dug that. I really love the acting here. Regina King seemed to be having an absolute blast playing this type of character, because we've never really seen her like this before. At least I can't think of anything like where she's been this type of character. Her character Trudy here is the right hand to Rufus Buck, so that should tell you everything you need to see. And like I say, you know, you have the fight choreography being the only thing here that feels a bit modern. You know, I don't know how much of that would have really been happening back then. But the gun shootouts, I mean, it's very over the top. There's like a lot of blood spatter, but everything feels, you feel the weight of it. You know, the sound effects, everything is done so well. You feel like, oh my goodness, that person just got blasted away. And the blood splatter, it's all over the top. Like I said, it's very much an homage to these westerns that came before, but it has this retelling of these stories of these people that have been forgotten with time, you know. So overall, guys, even with the, like I said, the music thing, it might just be personally me, you know. I don't know how you guys felt about it. Even with little moments like that, even with, I felt the film ran a tad too long. But then again, how long is the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? It worked. Overall, this film works. And while I'm not a huge fan of westerns, I enjoyed this for what it was. So I'm giving The Harder They Fall a 6.5 out of 10. And that's going to be it for this one, guys. So I hope you enjoyed this review. And if you've seen this movie, hey, let me know what you felt about it. Was it like the best western you've seen? Are you a fan of westerns? And if so, where would this fall for you? And if you like this video, please feel free to hit that thumbs up button. It's always appreciated. If you're new and you'd like to subscribe to my channel, first of all, thank you very much. And second, you can click on my face when it pops up right about there. And you can check out past videos right along this way. So until the next one, guys. Bye-bye.